All right, for example 3, we are going to, again, factor our function. What we need to have happen first is this whole thing needs to be set equal to 0. Every single time, that's the very first thing. You want it to say equals 0 somewhere. So I want x squared to say positive, so I'm going to subtract 4x and 5 on both sides of the equation. So the 4x and the 5 are going to cancel out on the right-hand side. That's going to get replaced by 0. On the left-hand side, we have x squared minus 4x minus 5. Again, we're not going to combine any of these terms because they are not terms that can be combined. We're just going to write them down next to each other in order from x squared down to the 5. Now to factor this, we need to find terms that multiply to equal the negative 5. So factors of negative 5 that have a sum equal to negative 4. So they add together to equal negative 4. Since they multiply to be negative, one of them has to be positive and one of them has to be negative. And 5 doesn't have very many factors. It only has the factors of 1 and 5. So we can determine that our factors are going to be negative 5 and a positive 1, because negative 5 plus 1 is going to give us that sum of negative 4. So when we go to set up our parentheses, it's going to say x minus 5 and x plus 1 equals 0. Then we are going to divvy these up into two separate equations set equal to 0. So we have x minus 5 equals 0 and x plus 1 equals 0. Then we need to solve for x to get x by itself. So we are going to add 5 to both sides for our equation on the left. And that gives us x is equal to a positive 5. And then on our second equation, the one on the right, we are going to subtract 1 on both sides to move it away from x. And then x is equal to negative 1. So we have x could be equal to 5 or negative 1, or and negative 1. For example 4, we have h of x equals x squared plus 3x. For this one, I need to turn that h of x into 0. So 0 equals x squared plus 3x. Now this does not have 3 terms like some of the other ones that we factored, but that's okay. We're not always going to have 3 terms to factor out. Sometimes we just need to factor a GCF. If I look at my 2 terms, I have x squared and 3x. They both have an x, so I can factor that x out. So I'm going to take an x out of the equation, or out of the x squared and 3x, and put it outside in the parentheses. If you want to give it its own set of parentheses, that's fine too. And when we factor that out, x squared, take away an x, gives us x. 3x, take away an x, is just 3. So we still have 2 terms, and again, if you want to put this x in parentheses, you can, if that's helpful, to remember that it is its own term. So we are going to set each one of these equal to 0. So x is equal to 0, and there's nothing we need to change with that. There's no addition or subtraction happening. It's just x is equal to 0 is going to be one of our solutions. And then we have x plus 3 equals 0. And for that one, we're going to need to subtract 3 on both sides. So then x is equal to negative 3. So for example 4, we can have x is equal to 0 and negative 3 as our answers.